there anything else or any other piece of advice that you could give to help people make decisions on what charity they want to give back to that's really most meaningful to them?
Yeah, I would say, or kind of think about what you're most passionate about. That would be step number one. But step number two would be to have conversations. A lot of times charities like to hear from donors, and donors would like to share maybe their thoughts or why this particular charity is most impactful to them.
Welcome back to today's episode of the Dream Architect Life podcast. Brittany Anderson here with a gentleman who is not Brian Sweet. So I'm going to give the formal introduction here. You actually get the great pleasure of meeting one of our other partners at Sweet Financial Partners, Oliver Kolofsky. Now, I'm going to read, and Oliver, I get to talk about you while you're here. So we'll just make this as least awkward as possible.
All right.
Oliver's knack for simplifying the complex and generating creative planning strategies for our clients has earned him the unofficial title of the smart guy in the office. Now, I think Brian's the only one that's actually given him that title, but we'll all go with it. All jokes aside, Oliver thrives in creating opportunities in even the most complex cases and in painting a picture that allows the client to make informed and educated decisions. Since joining our Sweet Financial team in 2007 and becoming a partner in 2013, Oliver has worked closely with the advisors in the office to help our clients create the retirement they can't wait to wake up to. What some may not know about the poised and often reserved Oliver that you'll find here is that he enjoys driving race car, has been an avid hockey player and coach for much of his life. When he's not doing cool stuff like that, you will find him hanging out with his family, his lovely wife, Emily, and his sons, Jace and Van. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You mentioned the race car. I think we might weave that into the conversation today.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm intrigued now, even more so than before we started this.
Yes.
So you know what, Oliver, we're going to dive right in because I think today's topic is really interesting and timely, given the spirit of the season. So today's all about charitable giving. We are so darn fortunate that we tend to work with really charitably inclined people.
We do, yeah.
Yeah. So Oliver, you work so closely with many of our great clients. So can you share how you see people make decisions when it comes to charitable endeavors and really finding out what's most meaningful to them?
Sure. Yeah, there's I would say various ways to answer that or look at that. I would say number one, like a timely impact. A lot of times we'll see maybe a capital campaign for a specific project or mission. Sometimes clients will even put up matching, where if some group of folks or the public donate a certain amount, they'll match it. We see that one very popular. Another one is maybe through a memorial of a loved one. So let's say there's a scholarship that's created for in memory of a loved one or for a certain purpose. We see that one quite frequently. And also, as we think about charitable giving, kind of try to think of charity as a nonprofit. So if you, let's say, enjoy being on the walking trails around lakes in your town and you want to improve that, you would probably give money to like the city, let's say, which is technically a charity in the sense of if it's a nonprofit. So slightly changing the dynamic of how clients think about that can really be helpful in terms of their giving.
You know, I think, Oliver, that brings up such great points. And we'll talk about this as we go through today, but sometimes just choosing the charity can be the hardest thing.
Oh, yeah. Yes, very true.
There's so many opportunities. And when you are a giving by nature person, you want to do a little bit for everybody. So we'll get into that in a moment. But Oliver, you know, we went through your kind of official bio.
Yep.
I didn't mention all of the credentials, but it is so true. You have so much genius and value to bring to the table. So I would love for you to share, for our listeners' sake, what's been your journey? Like, what got you into this field? And, you know, what are you, I guess, most excited for the future of Sweet Financial?
Sure. Yeah. So if we start with the journey, I would say growing up, I always liked numbers. I generally liked problem solving. Liked working with people. And I always knew of Sweet Financial growing up here in Fairmont. So as I went off to college, I talked with several folks and tried to decide, well, what career path might a person take that likes numbers, problem solving, but also likes working with people. I knew I didn't want to be just a number cruncher all day. Really like that interaction, working with people. So, one of the routes it got narrowed down to was financial planning, which I really enjoyed. Speaking with people, learning more about it, reading books, and then crossing paths with Sweet Financial back in 2007. It worked out, and definitely got the progression over the last coming up here on 16 years. It's been wonderful. So just really excited about all the positive impact we can make to clients, to the community. Certainly the planning through the Dream Architect process really generates excitement.
Hey, Brittany here. In case you hadn't heard, our latest book, Dream Architecture, is available for the taking. Think about it like this. What is your biggest, wildest dream of what retirement could look like? Not the dream that your friends have, or your parents maybe had, or your coworkers. Your best dream, the unreasonable one, the one that you might have trouble admitting even to yourself. So that is what the Dream Architecture book is about. Hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com so you can start dreaming big today. Oliver, I think you brought up such an important point that so much of what you do, because you also head up our wealth services department.
Yep.
So you're working, one-on-one with clients, you're supporting advisors, and you're running that department. And a lot of what we do is really problem solving.
Yes.
So I think that's such an interesting thing, is that our focus is obviously number one on the relationship. But number two, it's really, how do we make the complex simple? And I think that's something that is so valuable that you absolutely help people with. So I think that's just an awesome addition to the team. So Oliver, I want to know, when you think about, the different relationships that you have and the clients that you serve,
Yep.
What are some of the strategies that people could use, something really simple that they could implement today as part of their charitable giving strategy?
Sure. I would say it's I'm going to say dependent on age a little bit, and let's use like age 70 and a half as the cutoff, which is of course a goofy age, but that's one of the tax rules. The age is 70 and a half. So if someone is age 70 and a half or over, and if you have a traditional IRA, which a lot of folks would have, doing something called QCD. There's lots of acronyms in finance, it seems, but QCD means Qualified Charitable Distribution, which means if you give money from your IRA directly to charity, you won't have to count that amount as income. So in essence, you got to deduct it, as the tax rules changed several years ago. And a lot of folks aren't getting a charitable deduction. Of course, that's unique to your tax return. But a lot of folks, if they give cash, aren't really getting a tax deduction. So something called a QCD, or Qualified Charitable Distribution, which in essence is using your IRA to fund your charitable giving. It's maybe sounds a little intimidating with the acronym, but it's a fairly straightforward and simple process. And that's really great for those age 70 and a half and older.
Oliver, I think it's interesting because, we really try to mix some of the technical with the strategy with kind of the bigger vision.
Sure.
And, one thing that I want to point out and pull here out of the conversation is that as you hear us talking about charitable giving, you're sitting here listening going, okay, I'm getting my hands around this. I see there's opportunities, maybe things I haven't thought about. The big thing I want to point out here is this is all tied to your bigger vision and your bigger dreams for the future. So for our listeners tuning in, it's so important to start high level first and really think about things like legacy, impact, value systems that people want to pass down to their kids and their grandkids. So I think that's something that helps people make really well-informed decisions that they feel really good about.
Yes.
And they get excited about. So then the stuff that's like, okay, we're talking about QCDs and these acronyms that Oliver mentions, it brings purpose and meaning to them. So then people get excited versus it feeling so transactional in nature. So I think that's what's so cool to see when people go the technical route. It's all tied to their big dreams and goals.
Yes.
Yeah. So Oliver, I'm going to flip this back to a personal one.
Okay.
What does giving back mean to you personally?
Yeah, I would say, of course, it can mean various things to various people. I would say, giving back would be, being giving with time and resources to really make a positive impact on those you care about most, or your community. And I mentioned time because we do get the question from time to time, is like, if I donate a lot of my time to charity, which a lot of folks do, is there a tax benefit? And the answer is no. But certainly time is something, so many great people out there doing so many great things. Time is something where we see a lot of folks giving back, as well as resources or monetary type items. Yep.
I think that's such a great point because, Oliver, we've had these conversations internally and with people we serve, that as people are going, let's just talk about like the from versus the to.
Yes.
So they're coming from a lifelong career, owning a business, duties with families, if you have kids, and then all of a sudden you're having to define what you're going to. So we all know where we're coming from, but where we're going to can be a little unnerving, let's call it. So I think you bring up such a valid point that as you're thinking about your charitable inclinations and really what you see as a vision for your future, thinking about how you're spending your time and what will give you purpose and meaning. That really comes to the core of this. If you think about it, there are so many people and there's so many great organizations that you can spend your time. And if you think about it, it is the only commodity we can't get back. We can't make more of it. We can make more money. We can make more things. We can make more stuff per se, create more opportunities maybe, but you can never get your time back.
Correct.
So I think that's, it's great representation of how we see so many people giving back, not just on the technical and the financial side. So Oliver, I want to flip this around a little bit too. There are definitely many strategies for charitable giving. There are ways that you can use your time, as you mentioned. But what about some of the mistakes you see people making?
Sure. I would say, would highlight maybe one item, and it's maybe a mistake for some. For others, it's maybe not a mistake, but I would say maybe cash gifts to charity, of just writing out a check, let's say, to charity. So as I alluded to a few moments ago, the tax law has changed several years ago, and it's more difficult to get a tax deduction for cash gifts than it was several years ago. So for some folks, maybe giving something other than cash, maybe giving investments that have appreciated in value. Maybe, as I mentioned a few moments ago, giving from your IRA might make more sense. So still being able to give to charity, but from which account you give and when can be important, and giving cash or writing out a check may not always be the best. For some folks, it is, but certainly evaluating other options to, of course, make an educated and informed decision, where for some, just giving cash might not be the best strategy, or there might be other options that might allow them to give more because they save a little bit more in taxes.
Oliver, what you make me think of is, part of our mission and how we serve and who we serve is that we want to be that first phone call for people. So whether they're looking at, like you said, making some sort of cash value donation or cash equivalent donation, they're buying a vehicle, they're thinking about a new house, a second home, a really big vacation, whatever that looks like. I think this is so important. So regardless of whether you're a client of Sweet Financial or not, I think there's so much value in reaching out to somebody who can help you make an informed decision. That's really the goal of all of this, I think. So Oliver, we've talked about a couple, I guess, let's call them really simple strategies, things that people could implement. But what is often overlooked in some of the more, call it complex, meatier situations that you've run into?
Sure. Yeah, I would say there's certainly situations where a person or a couple's tax situation will change over time. Let's use like a business owner, for example, where maybe in the year in which the business is sold, there's a spike in income, and potentially they're in a much higher tax bracket at that point than they would be, let's say, in retirement. So when we look at charitable giving, is there a way to be, and let's say, in control of the money, or you control when to give money to charity, but also control the timing of when you get the tax benefit? So if we look at a situation like this, instead of giving, let's say a person's going to give $5,000 a year to charity for the next 20 years, let's say, and these numbers can be about anything, but use some round numbers here. But let's say maybe in the future they're going to be in a lower tax bracket, and that $5,000 a year they give to charity is really not going to have a lot of tax impact. But what if in the year they sell their business, they can get that full $100,000 benefit, but not actually have to give the money to charity? And that's where something called a donor advised fund can come into play, where a person can get a larger tax deduction now without actually having the money go to the final charity in the future. So that's a great way to stay kind of in control of when the charity gets the money, but you also control when you get the tax deduction or tax benefit by kind of accelerating the tax benefit into a current year where you might have a large spike in income.
Yep. I think this is a great example of how so many situations are different and opportunities can come from different scenarios. Correct. Too. So, you give the example there of the business owner. We do often work with business owners leading up to a sale or a liquidity event.
Sure.
Often work with retirees who have been in a same or similar career for a really long time. Yep. And timing is really important, yes, especially in today's world. And obviously, laws are changing and there's things outside of our control and you can't control the economy and all that great stuff. Yep. But we can control how we get guided advice. Sure. And how we ultimately make what could be the best decision for our individual situations. Yes. So I'm going to phrase maybe this next question with a little bit of a story. So it was interesting because I was recently in a conversation with an entrepreneur friend of mine. Okay. He runs kind of a big, call it a mastermind. So brings in groups of people and provides great resources and training and all this stuff. Well, it was really important to him to have some sort of charity tied to the admission fees. Okay. So we're in this conversation and he's like, the problem is I was in a total state of decision fatigue. Yep. He's like, I knew in general the type of charity that I wanted to donate or contribute to or add impact to. But he's like, as I started digging into it, how do you know what's legitimate, what's not, sure, what's going to actually make a difference? How much of it goes to the actual cause versus maybe the operations of the charity itself? And it was just interesting hearing that. And this isn't the first time I've been in conversations like that, where people are really struggling to make those impactful decisions. So Oliver, you touched on this earlier, kind of talking about, thinking about what's meaningful, you like walks on the paths in your town, sure, giving to the city, that kind of thing. But is there anything else or any other piece of advice that you could give to help people make decisions on what charity they want to give back to that's really most meaningful to them?
Yeah, I would say, or kind of think about what you're most passionate about. That would be step number one. But step number two would be to have conversations. A lot of times charities like to hear from donors, and donors would like to share maybe their thoughts or why this particular charity is most impactful to them. So, and maybe there's a connection, or maybe you speak with the charity and maybe there isn't quite a connection, and that might give you further insight that maybe this charity isn't quite the correct one for what I would like to see as the vision, and you move on to the next. So certainly having that conversation is a great thing. And then kind of changing the mindset of what exactly is a charity. Think of it like a charity as like a nonprofit. So sometimes people don't realize that certain things, let's say a town or a municipality, is in fact, in the truest sense of the tax law, it's technically a charity because it's tax-free. So something like a dog park is coming to town or something, and you want to help with that. If you're passionate about animals and giving them a space to roam, that's something that could be something that you'd want to have a conversation about.
Mm. Yep. Oliver, I think of this, and it's a little facetious, but I think about things that are like the best kept secrets. Sure. And sometimes the great charities or the great giving opportunities, let's call it, they're not out there parading around asking for money. So I think that's something too. I think you bring up such a great point, to reach out, to have those conversations. If something sparks your interest, to see what you could potentially do to add impact, to add value, and to give back to something that's really meaningful. It's just like businesses too, and marketing. We talk about how businesses can sometimes keep their great services a secret. Sure. And it's just, there's not the right marketing around it. And marketing can be looked at as, I don't know, a negative or a dirty word because it
Sure.
seems self-serving, but that's so not true. It's about putting out there what
Right.
value you bring. And it's the same whether it's a charitable type company, entity, nonprofit, or it's a business.
Sure.
It's all kind of the same thing. Yeah. So Oliver, I like to flip back and forth between the personal here, and
Yes.
you know what the culture here at Sweet Financial is.
Yep.
We talk a lot about pushing through and overcoming fear and helping people lean into possibility. So I want you to think of a time where you personally strategically overcame fear and didn't let it stop you from a moment of growth and learning.
Sure. So it's going to go back a way. So let's go back to rewind, if you will, to maybe 2002 or so. So I had always wanted to try auto racing or car racing, as my father had done it for a number of years. So I finally got the opportunity in I believe it was 2002, and my first few attempts at it. I really struggled. I didn't do well, and it was something, I suppose, like many things in life, from the outside, it looked like it'd be pretty easy to do, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, which wasn't the case, or at least for me. It's very difficult, and I struggled. And at that point, I was like, man, I had always wanted to do this, and I'm not very good at it, which makes it not very fun for me. So now what? Do I kind of move on to something different, or do I continue? Do I maybe change strategy a little bit? And as it turns out, I continued with it and had a lot of success over the years. And as I look back, I don't not in auto racing any longer, but look back at kind of some of the best memories over the past, let's say 20, 25 years would be with family and friends around auto racing. So it was something kind of a point in time where I had to make a decision, and I guess in hindsight, I think it was the right decision and allowed me to grow and learned a lot along the way as well.
I
Yep.
think that's such a cool story, Oliver. And you know how it is. I got to find meaning in everything.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna go there for a second. It immediately made me think because you made the comment about how you were at this pivotal point where you had to decide, do I throw in the towel, take a hike, find a new hobby, a new
Right.
thing of interest, or
Right.
do I stay the course and do I keep pushing forward? And I think that's such a valuable lesson for our listeners, whether you're thinking about it from your own point of view of, overcoming some hobby or I'm sorry, overcoming a fear in a hobby you're interested in or something you're trying for the first time, or it's about your finances and your wealth plan. I think that oftentimes where people kind of fall off track is when they don't stay the course to kind of meet that vision.
Sure.
And it seems like you had a vision. You're like, this can't be that hard. I've got to figure this out. I want to be able to be good at this thing because it's an interest of mine.
Yep.
If you would have quit, you would have never known.
Correct. Yep.
And I think it's so true in anything in life. It's like if you don't at least give it the old college try, you don't align yourself with the right people who can give you maybe tips and tricks and insights along the way and help you reach the big vision that you have for your future,
Yep.
makes it a little bit harder.
Yep.
So I think aligning yourself with the right people is so powerful and important.
Yep.
So Oliver, when you think about personally your future here at Sweet Financial, I know we kind of opened up with this a little bit, but is there anything else that you really feel excited about, that you're energized about, that kind of gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, so certainly. So when we think, transitions are all around us, and I think transitions can mean different things to different people. Some transitions in life, I think, are planned, some are unplanned. So when we think about maybe the planned ones, career changes, I'm retiring from something, retiring to something. But certainly there are, of course, unplanned transitions as well. Health can change, a death of a loved one. So I think as we look at transition, the Dream Architect planning process is really outlining a roadmap to ideally navigate those transitions with confidence. I think that really, gives excitement for the future, that there is a path forward, and making educated, informed decisions about the future, and having a plan in place to give you confidence really gives me excitement. Yeah.
That's awesome, Oliver. And we opened up with this formal bio, but it really plays into the strengths. And Oliver's so humble in his approach. And I know I'm talking about you again, like you're not here, but it's so true. So Oliver, again, because I have to ask the question, when you think about your future, even outside of Sweet Financial, what is one of your big, call it dreams or aspirations that you have for your future?
Sure. So I would say throughout life thus far, I've probably made the decision to not travel a whole lot, or not travel as much as others. I've certainly done done a decent amount of traveling, and it's probably relative as to how much travel I've done. But there's some great spots in the United States that I would like to visit. I would think of like the Grand Canyon or Alaska. A lot of people have been to Alaska and the great beauty of Alaska. So just looking forward to or aspiring to travel more, definitely in the U.S. and certainly abroad as well. But yeah, that would be something that certainly look forward to and aspire to do.
Mm. I think you're so right with there being so many great spots right here under our nose. And this is random. This is not scripted. But I'll tell you, I just saw an ad the other day for this awesome cup. And
Okay.
For those listening, a few of us in the office have some obsessions with cups. So I'm just putting it out there. But it was really neat because it had a little space on the cup and then a sticker associated with it for every national park in the US that you visited.
Sure.
So I was like, that's such a cool thing. So I think about ideas for gifts for grandkids or kids who have that maybe travel bug in them that want to explore that. That's kind of a cool way to keep track of it.
Yes,
So
very neat. Makes sense.
Thought, but there you go, Oliver.
Excellent.
All right. So before we wrap up with my very last question, if you have any questions on your individual situation, you want to sit down and just talk to somebody, make sure that you're making informed decisions for your future. You can hop on over to meetwithsweet.com. It's MEET with sweet, SWEET.com, and grab a spot on one of our advisors' calendars. Quick 30-minute discovery. It can help you just make sure that you're on the right track, that you're making the right decisions and you're doing things that benefit and support your future. So Oliver, my very last question, is there anything that I did not ask you that I should have today?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I think you maybe asked, and I went a different direction with the answer. But when we think about legacy, so being intentional with legacy, and again, legacy can mean different things to different people. But if we look at, if we think about where the money will ultimately go, and we think about that and legacy and charitable aspirations, being mindful that different account types go to people and are handled from a tax perspective in different manners. So if you do have charitable aspirations in certain dollar amounts, you do want to go to charity at some point. Being intentional about which accounts would go to charity is very important and something you'd want to have a conversation about. There couldn't be some kind of surprise tax implications if maybe the wrong, quote unquote, wrong account goes to charity or the wrong account goes to maybe your family. So really those legacy aspirations, being intentional about which account goes where is very, very key.
As always, Oliver, this has been jam-packed with value. I so appreciate you and what you bring to our clients.
Certainly. Well, thank you. Yep.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Dream Architect Life podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, go ahead and throw us a like, give it a share it with somebody that you think could benefit, and basically tune in and hear some of the value that was spoke to today and on some of the past episodes. Again, if you would like to grab a spot on one of our advisors' calendars, hop on over to meetwithsweet.com. We'll catch you right back here next time.